chosen one, listen closely. Heaven has paused everything around you, not by accident, not by coincidence, but because your name has been spoken in the courts of glory. This is the moment right before your win. The silence that feels unbearable is not punishment, it is preparation. You stand at the edge of divine unveiling, where every tear you cried becomes currency for the crown you're about to wear. The air feels heavier lately, doesn't it? You wake up with a pressure in your chest, like something enormous is about to break, but you can't see it yet. That's not anxiety. That's your spirit, recognizing divine movement. Heaven is aligning the unseen, orchestrating people, moments, and timing so precise that only God Himself could weave them together. You've walked through seasons where it felt like everyone else was winning but you. You congratulated others, supported others, prayed for others, and still, your miracles seemed delayed. But what if I told you that this delay is not denial, but divine choreography? Every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every lonely night was the architect's way of ensuring that when the door finally opens, it won't just be a door, it will be the door that fits your calling perfectly. You were never meant to blend in. Chosen one. The weight of waiting has been your teacher. God's silence has been His strategy. Every hidden moment refined your discernment, strengthened your endurance, and silenced your dependence on validation. You've been asking, Lord, why does it feel like you've paused everything? But what you call a pause, heaven calls positioning. There's a sacred hush before the sound of victory. Even the angels hold their breath when heaven prepares to announce the next move of a chosen one. And that's you. You've been through too much for this to be random. The pain was prophetic. The confusion was a classroom. The isolation was initiation. This is not the end of your story. It's the moment between prophecy and performance. Do you feel that stirring deep within your soul, that sudden urgency to clean your space, to pray more, to detach from distractions? It's not just you trying to be better. It's the Spirit preparing the stage for divine manifestation. When heaven is about to release something major, you start to sense a shift before it becomes visible. People might leave. Opportunities might seem to dry up. But those are divine rearrangements, proof that your environment is being purified for your elevation. Don't let weariness make you misinterpret divine silence. Sometimes heaven grows quiet because it's letting your enemies talk themselves out. Sometimes the silence comes because God wants to show you that your strength doesn't come from noise but from knowing. And when that knowing takes root, peace replaces panics. You no longer chase what's yours. You attract it by existing in alignment. You start to notice signs, numbers repeating, a verse flashing before your eyes, someone speaking words that echo your prayers. Those are heaven's breadcrumbs leading you forward. The time of testing has reached its final hour. You've proven faithfulness when no one was watching. You've chosen integrity when compromise was easier. And now, the divine reward approaches not because you earned it, but because you endured it. You are about to see the reason for the restraint, the purpose behind the pain. As Jesus Himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 16, "Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." This is that moment, the one every chosen one feels before the win. The shift in the air, the internal whisper saying, "It's close." You've seen it in dreams, You've sensed it in worship. And now heaven confirms it through this message. Your breakthrough is in motion. So breathe. Straighten your back. Lift your head. The same God who carried you through the valley will crown you on the mountain. The same grace that sustained you in obscurity will announce you in visibility. You are standing in the doorway between your preparation and your promotion. This is your divine reminder that you were never forgotten. The silence was proof that heaven was still writing. You will soon walk into rooms that once felt unreachable. The conversations will change. The atmosphere will shift. And you'll realize that all along, heaven was waiting for this exact version of you. If this word reaches your spirit, do not scroll away. It's confirmation, not coincidence. Hit that like button. Share this with someone else who feels like they're standing on the edge of something greater. And subscribe, so you never miss another divine reminder meant for you. Then, in the comments, write the number 777 as a prophetic sign that you are ready for your season of divine completion and heavenly alignment. Your turn is not coming. Your turn is here. You can feel it. Can't you? Chosen one, that strange heaviness that presses down on your shoulders right before something magnificent is about to happen. The exhaustion that doesn't quite make sense. The sudden urge to cry for no reason. The unexpected silence from people who once celebrated you. All of it points to one thing. You are standing in the tension between the breaking point and the breakthrough. This is the wait before the win. You've carried responsibilities that were never yours, burdens that others dropped, and expectations that suffocated your peace. You've smiled through storms, showed up when your heart was bruised, and held your faith even when it trembled in your hands. Yet, the deeper you go into this waiting season, the heavier it feels, almost as if heaven itself is testing how long you can stand when nothing seems to move. But here's the mystery. That heaviness is sacred. It's proof that something divine is stretching within you. When God is about to enlarge your territory, He first enlarges your capacity to endure. The tension you feel is not a sign of rejection. It's the pressure of expansion. You might be wondering, why does it always get harder before it gets better? Because before every resurrection, there is a cross. Before every new dawn, there is darkness. Before every crown, there is a crushing. Heaven is not cruel, it's deliberate. You are being refined in a furnace that only chosen ones can survive. Every delay, every heartbreak, every betrayal, it's all the weight that builds your wings. Sometimes, the silence before the victory is louder than the noise of battle. You begin to question yourself, your calling, your worth. You look around and see others running ahead while you're stuck in what feels like quicksand. But God says, be still. You are not stuck, you are being rooted. Trees that are meant to stand tall must grow deep first. You are not late, you are being anchored. Your tears have not gone unnoticed. Every sleepless night, every whispered prayer, every time you said, I trust you, while breaking inside, He recorded it all. The heavens have not been deaf to your cries. They've been preparing your reward. When you feel the weight increase, it's because the promise is close. Labor pains intensify before birth. The shaking before the shift is heaven's announcement that your time is near. And yet, the enemy wants you to see this pressure as punishment. He wants to convince you that God has abandoned you, that your faith was foolish, that your prayers were wasted. But you must remember, the darker the night, the closer the dawn, Your faith is not failing, it's being fortified. Heaven does not test you to break you, it tests you to reveal you. You are stronger than the doubts that whisper. You are wiser than the fear that tries to silence you. You are closer than you think. There is a power in surrendering under the weight rather than running from it. When you stop fighting the process, you start flowing with the purpose. What feels like delay is actually divine rhythm. Every sigh, every pause, every quiet moment is heaven aligning what your heart has prayed for. The ancient words recorded in Romans chapter 8, verse 18 declare, I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. And that is your reminder. There is a glory rising inside you that makes this wait worthwhile. You may not see it yet, but heaven sees the version of you that is almost ready to reign. You are walking through divine resistance training. Every tear builds strength. Every rejection sharpens discernment. Every delay refines character. This is the sacred paradox of the chosen. The greater your calling, the greater your crushing. But remember, the crushing produces oil, the very anointing that will distinguish you. So when the pressure comes, don't curse it. Embrace it. The win you've been praying for isn't just about reaching a destination. It's about becoming the kind of vessel that can sustain it. So let the weight sit for a while. Let it teach you how to stand. Let it press you into prayer. Because soon, the same pressure that tried to bury you will launch you. And when that moment comes, you'll look back and realize it wasn't breaking you. It was birthing you. The closer you get to your breakthrough, the louder the war in your mind becomes. It's not a coincidence. The enemy does not waste resources on the unthreatening. The moment heaven marks you for promotion, hell marks you for distraction. The battle you feel right now, the confusion, the overthinking, the sudden fear that you've missed your chance is not a sign you're losing. It's confirmation that you are next in line. The greatest warfare of your life is not happening around you, it's happening in you. The mind of a chosen one becomes the final battlefield before the blessing breaks through. Every lie that hell ever told you comes back in full force right before your moment of revelation. You start to hear whispers of doubt. You're not ready. You'll mess it up. You've waited too long. But these are not random thoughts. They're the desperate echoes of an enemy who knows his grip is slipping. You have to understand, the enemy cannot steal what God has already decreed. So instead, he tries to exhaust you. He uses fear to cloud your faith and worry to drain your worship. He can't change God's promise, so he tries to change your perception of it. That's why lately your thoughts have felt louder, heavier, harder to silence, because you are standing on the border of destiny. The battle for your mind is not just psychological, it's spiritual. Heaven is not asking you to fight alone, it's asking you to guard the gates. What you think, what you speak, what you entertain, these become the soldiers that either defend or surrender your peace. And when your peace is protected, your power multiplies. When anxiety comes like a flood, remind yourself, this storm is not stronger than the one who calms it. When doubt whispers, you're forgotten, answer back, I am chosen. You must take every thought captive and make it bow before truth, because thoughts shape faith, and faith shapes reality. The voice of God thundered in the book of Exodus, chapter 14, verse 14. The Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still. There is divine power in stillness. The enemy wants movement, panic, rushing, overreacting, because motion without direction drains purpose. But God invites you to stand still in faith, to watch Him turn chaos into clarity. The moment you stop fighting to figure everything out is the moment heaven steps in to finish what you started. You've been under mental siege because your next chapter requires a sharper mind. God is renewing your focus, pruning your thoughts, cleansing your inner world, so that when He releases the promise, you have the capacity to carry it. This warfare isn't meant to break your mind, it's meant to strengthen your discernment. There's a reason certain memories resurface, certain fears return, certain insecurities suddenly grow loud. It's the enemy replaying your old soundtrack, hoping you'll dance to it again. But you've outgrown that rhythm. You've matured. You've learned to discern the difference between divine conviction and demonic condemnation. Conviction draws you closer to God. Condemnation drives you further away. Choose proximity. Not panits. This is your awakening. Your mind is not a prison, it's a portal. Whatever you magnify multiplies. If you magnify fear, it grows. If you magnify faith, it glows. So feed your focus, not your frustration. Every chosen one reaches this stage, the mental resistance before the release. The pressure you feel is heaven's way of pushing you into clarity, because when your mind aligns with your mission, nothing can stop you. Right now, take a deep breath. Let go of every thought that tells you it's too late. Release every voice that doesn't sound like peace. You are not behind. You are becoming. And every time you choose faith over fear, you are declaring war on hell's agenda. So here's your prophetic act today. Go to the comments and write, "I am focused." Write it as a declaration, not a wish. Because when you type those words, you are not just engaging with a message, you are aligning with heaven's frequency. You are telling every power of darkness that your mind belongs to God, not to fear, not to failure, not to the past. Say it again in your heart, "I am focused." That's how victories begin, not with swords, but with stillness, not with noise, but with knowing. You are the calm in the storm, because the one who commands the storm lives in you. Keep standing. Chosen one. The battle for your mind is the final proof that the promise is near. And once your mind agrees with your calling, your life will follow. Sometimes the signs are subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye. But for the chosen, they arrive like divine codes, whispering that something extraordinary is unfolding. You begin to notice patterns that can't be explained by coincidence, numbers repeating on clocks, messages arriving at just the right moment, people entering or leaving your life without warning. It's not random. It's heaven's handwriting. You are on heaven's radar. When your spirit becomes attuned to divine frequency, the natural and the supernatural start to blend. The things that used to frustrate you now start to make sense. That missed opportunity, it wasn't rejection, it was redirection. That friendship that dissolved, it wasn't betrayal, it was removal for protection. Heaven never subtracts without the intention to multiply later. The chosen must learn that alignment often looks like loss before it looks like blessing. Every interruption, every delay, every sudden ending is a coded message from heaven. Prepare for repositioning. You see, when the next level of your purpose is near, God doesn't ask for your permission to rearrange your surroundings. He simply begins to shift things to fit his plan. And if you look carefully, you'll see the fingerprints of grace all over what once looked like chaos. You may have noticed that some people can no longer reach you the way they once did. Conversations feel different. Certain environments no longer bring peace. Even your own habits begin to irritate your spirit. This isn't moodiness, it's transformation. When heaven upgrades your calling, it also upgrades your atmosphere. You are being tuned to a higher spiritual frequency. Sometimes you feel like everything familiar is fading, and it frightens you. But what feels like loss is actually liberation. The Spirit cannot fill what is already full. To make room for new miracles, old attachments must loosen. Heaven clears the path before it crowns the chosen. You are being positioned for visibility after a season of divine obscurity. Don't mistake hiddenness for insignificance. When God hides you, it's not to deny you, it's to develop you. Hidden seasons are heaven's protection against premature exposure. What others can't see, God is still shaping. You might wonder why you feel both anticipation and anxiety at once. It's because your spirit recognizes what your mind has not yet comprehended. Promotion is near. Heaven always sends signals before manifestation. Your dreams start to sharpen. Random verses or phrases echo in your heart. You begin to feel time moving differently, as if something unseen is accelerating. That's because it is. When you are marked for destiny, you become spiritually magnetic. Blessings, opportunities, and divine connections start gravitating toward you. But so do tests. Every new level of glory attracts a new level of resistance. The sign that heaven's eyes are on you is not ease, it's elevation through opposition. And through it all, God leaves a trail of signs, so you'll never forget. He's in control. The stranger who spoke exactly what you needed to hear, the moment a song lyric confirmed your prayer, the door that opened after you thought you had failed for the last time. Heaven is saying, I see you. You are not overlooked. You are being aligned. Oh, you must train your heart to discern divine signals from emotional noise. Heaven does not speak to your insecurity. It speaks to your identity. That's why the message always carries peace. Even when it challenges you. Confusion never comes from God. Conviction does. Peace does. The voice of heaven does not rush you. It roots you. Sometimes a divine sign looks like everything slowing down right before acceleration. God halts movement to test readiness. He places you in moments where nothing seems to progress, only for everything to unfold at once. The stillness is part of the synchronization. When heaven's timing meets your obedience, destiny opens effortlessly. Heaven speaks clearly through the words in Deuteronomy, chapter 31, verse 8. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Oh, this is what divine awareness feels like. You begin to realize that every season has been divinely scripted, every step ordered, every setback secretly advancing you toward the promise. You no longer need to chase signs because you are one. Your life itself becomes a testimony that heaven watches, guides, and intervenes. The chosen never walk alone. Even in silence, there are signals. Even in confusion, there is coordination. You don't have to understand every detail to trust the designer. Heaven's radar doesn't miss what it marks. And right now, you are marked for motion. So when you see the patterns, When you feel the pull, when the same message seems to echo from different directions, don't dismiss it. That's heaven saying, "You're in alignment. Stay steady." Lane, there are seasons when heaven pulls you away from the crowd, not because you did something wrong, but because your growth demands solitude, the silence, the distance, the unfamiliar quiet nights. They aren't punishment. They're proof that God has enrolled you in the isolation chamber, a sacred space where the noise of the world fades, so the voice of heaven can finally be heard clearly. You see, the world celebrates noise. Everyone wants to be seen, heard, noticed. But heaven does its deepest work in hiddenness. The cocoon is never glamorous, but it's the only place where transformation is possible. The caterpillar doesn't complain about the darkness. It trusts that the silence is doing something wings cannot yet explain. And you, chosen one, are in your cocoon. The isolation feels strange because it strips away distractions that once defined you. God is no longer allowing certain conversations to feed you. He's cutting the cords of dependency that once made you feel safe but also kept you small. This is the season where he separates the temporary from the eternal. He there's you, not to humiliate you, but to heal you. You might feel invisible, but heaven is watching every detail. You've been taken off the stage so your heart can be tuned again. You've been pulled from the crowd so your soul can breathe. The divine potter is reshaping your foundation in private before he displays your strength in public. What others call silence, heaven calls strategy. Remember when you thought you lost momentum? You didn't. You just entered maintenance mode, where God repairs what life has cracked. Just like a gardener prunes a rose bush so it can bloom again, God is pruning your surroundings so that new fruit can emerge. Yes, pruning hurts, but only because it cuts away what cannot carry you forward. Sometimes the greatest miracle isn't deliverance, it's development. God could have accelerated you instantly, but acceleration without preparation destroys destinies. The waiting room protects you from premature exposure. He's making sure that when you rise, you stay risen, that when you shine, your light doesn't flicker out under pressure. You're not forgotten. You're incubated. Hiddenness is heaven's greenhouse, where potential matures into purpose. Think of the seed buried underground. It doesn't see sunlight for a while. Yet in that darkness, roots spread, strength deepens, and life begins. The soil feels like isolation, but it's actually incubation. Even the stars must wait for night to reveal their beauty. If daylight never faded, their brilliance would stay unseen. In the same way, your darkness is not denial. It's the stage where heaven rehearses your rising, teaching you to glow without applause. The silence surrounding you is a sacred womb, not a tomb. Within it, dreams are refined, character is carved, and identity is born. When heaven finally says, "Now," every hidden hour will echo as purpose fulfilled, proof that waiting was not wasted, only woven. The Word of God declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 27, verse 14, "Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord." And every chosen one must pass through this waiting. It's not wasted time, it's sacred training. Heaven does not rush masterpieces. The same way a symphony requires silence before its most powerful note, your life requires stillness before its crescendo. So don't despise this season. The silence is strengthening your sensitivity. The solitude is sharpening your spirit. You're learning how to hear God without confirmation, how to walk without applause, how to trust without seeing. That's the kind of maturity that turns ordinary believers into chosen vessels, and when the time is right, you'll look back and thank God for every quiet night, every unanswered question, every lonely prayer, because you'll realize those were the moments heaven was writing your testimony. If this message stirs something deep in you, pause for a moment. Don't rush past what you feel. Maybe hit that like button, not as an act of habit, but as a small amen, a way of saying, Lord, I hear you. Maybe share this message with someone who feels forgotten, because sometimes the greatest gift you can give is a reminder that they are seen. And if your spirit has found comfort here, consider subscribing so that together we can keep walking this narrow but holy road, one revelation at a time, because when you share light, you multiply it. When you pass on hope, heaven echoes it back to you. The community of the chosen isn't built by noise, it's built by resonance, by hearts that recognize each other in the dark. You are not behind. You are becoming. The cocoon is temporary. Wings are permanent. And when you finally emerge, those who thought you disappeared will realize you were only being prepared to soar. There always comes a moment, chosen one, when obedience feels like loss. You stand before a choice that doesn't make sense to your logic, but whispers peace to your spirit. Heaven doesn't test your love with comfort, it tests it with cost. What God is asking you to release in this season may seem precious, irreplaceable, or even sacred. But this is not about what you lose, it's about what He's trying to place in your hands next. You've been sensing it already, that inner nudge, that gentle stirring, the awareness that something is shifting. You feel heaven tugging at your attachments, asking you to let go of what once felt essential. It could be a relationship, a plan, a title, or an old version of yourself. The longer you hold it, the heavier it feels, and the heavier it feels, the clearer the message becomes. Release is the doorway to renewal. Obedience is rarely convenient. It requires faith that God's later will always be better than your now. The pain of letting go isn't a punishment, it's the pruning that produces fruit. When God asks for what you love, it's never to leave you empty, but to prove He can be trusted to refill. Think of Abraham walking up Mount Moriah, carrying wood and faith. The climb was steep, but obedience gave him strength. God never wanted Isaac's death. He wanted Abraham's devotion. And when obedience reached the altar, heaven released provision. That is the pattern for every chosen one. Surrender first, supply second. Sometimes God tests you by touching what you treasure most. Not because He needs to see your loyalty, He already knows it, but because you need to see that your security is not in the thing, but in the one who gave it. You've been wondering why certain doors have closed, even though you prayed with pure intentions. It's not rejection, it's redirection. Some doors were built for who you were, not for who you're becoming. Obedience means walking away, even when it still looks good, trusting that heaven's replacement will make you forget the pain of release. The Apostle reminds us in his letter to the Corinthians, chapter 5, verse 7, "For we live by faith, not by sight." End quote. That's the heartbeat of obedience. You move when you don't yet see. You trust when you don't yet understand. You obey before it makes sense. Because faith doesn't wait for clarity, it creates it. Every time you say yes to God, something breaks in the unseen. Chains fall. Generational curses, lows, grip. Old identities dissolve. Obedience is heaven's language of authority. It's how the chosen demonstrate that they don't just believe they belong. And yet, obedience doesn't always feel heroic. Sometimes it feels lonely. Sometimes it feels like walking away from warmth into the unknown. But what if that unknown isn't emptiness? What if it's expansion? What if you're not losing safety, but gaining sovereignty? The hardest obedience often opens the highest door. When you release what's in your hand, God releases what's in His. It's a divine exchange. You don't have to understand the timing, you just have to trust the hand behind it. You've been praying for breakthrough, but sometimes the breakthrough waits for your yes. It's not that heaven hasn't answered, it's that heaven is waiting for alignment. When your heart says yes, the gates open. When you surrender, the flow begins. Chosen one. God is not taking from you, He's trading with you. What you lay down in tears will return, multiplied in glory. The altar is never the end. It's the beginning of abundance. You cannot outgive the giver. You may not realize it yet, but your obedience in this season will echo for generations. Others will walk in freedom because you chose surrender over control. Every yes you give builds a bridge for someone else's faith. That's how heaven multiplies obedience. It turns one person's surrender into many people's salvation. So don't resist the release. Breathe through it. Trust through it. Know that the very thing you think you're losing is only being repositioned for a greater resurrection. Right now, as an act of agreement, type 444 inches, the comments, not as a superstition, but as a symbol. 4 represents foundation. Your obedience is laying 1. Every quattro you type declares, I trust God's process more than my comfort. I will build on faith, not fear. When you do this, you're not just engaging with a message, you're activating your spirit to align with divine timing. This is your Mount Moriah moment. The mountain is steep, but the miracle is waiting at the top. Keep climbing, keep trusting, because when you finally see what obedience has built, you'll realize the weight you carried was not a burden, it was a blessing being born. Every scar you carry tells a sacred story. Chosen one. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every disappointment, it wasn't wasted. They were all part of heaven's training ground, designed not to destroy you, but to discipline your destiny. You have walked through fire that should have consumed you, but instead, it refined you. What others call pain, heaven calls preparation. You didn't just survive your wilderness, you were shaped by it. Each trial trained your spirit, sharpening your discernment, teaching you to recognize the difference between counterfeit peace and divine alignment. Those sleepless nights when you cried out for clarity, those were your spiritual boot camps. The tears weren't weakness, they were water for your roots. You have been in training without realizing it. Every rejection toughened your spirit. Every delay refined your patience. Every closed door taught you how to trust timing instead of talent. Heaven was sculpting your endurance in the shadows, turning what was once your breaking point into your birthing place. When soldiers train for war, they don't do it in comfort. They run through mud. They crawl under wire. They carry weight until their muscles remember the motion of resilience. In the same way, Your soul has been conditioned to carry divine authority. The struggles you faced were not curses, they were weightlifting for your spirit. You may have wondered why your journey has been harder than others. It's because your calling carries more weight. Heaven doesn't train warriors for playgrounds, it trains them for battlefields. While others were learning to be comfortable, you were learning to be unshakable. In your loneliness, God was teaching you intimacy. In your disappointment, He was teaching you discernment. In your battles, He was teaching you bravery. Nothing was random. Every hardship carried hidden wisdom that would one day turn into your testimony. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 12. For the Lord disciplines those He loves. As a father, the son He delights in. That discipline you felt, the stretching, the stripping, the silence, it was love in disguise. Heaven never disciplines to diminish, it disciplines to develop. God saw potential in you that pain alone could reveal. Without the process, you wouldn't have the purity of purpose you now carry. There were moments when you questioned whether your prayers were bouncing off the ceiling, but all the while, heaven was answering in the form of endurance. You learned how to stand when others sat. You learned how to believe when hope felt like dust. That kind of strength can't be given, it must be grown. You have been in divine military training. The rejection that broke your heart toughened your armor. The betrayal that wounded you strengthened your wisdom. Every season you thought was punishment was really preparation for your promotion. You are learning what few understand. Blessings can burden the unprepared. That's why heaven delays delivery until your character can carry the weight of your calling. If the breakthrough had come too soon, it would have crushed you. Now, you've got the spiritual muscles to handle what's coming. When you see others rise quickly, don't envy them. Some climb ladders, others are carved from mountains. Your rise may be slower, but it's stronger. You're not being built for momentary applause, you're being built for lasting authority. The lessons you learned in private are going to sustain you in public. The nights you wept in secret are fueling the wisdom you'll soon speak with power. What you endured is what will qualify you to lead. Heaven doesn't hand crowns to the comfortable, it gives them to those who survived the crushing. This is why you couldn't quit, even when you wanted to. It wasn't pride keeping you up, it was purpose. Destiny doesn't let you rest when you still have ground to cover. God didn't allow you to break because you were being built. The fire didn't come to consume you, it came to reveal the gold hidden beneath your fear. You are not the same as before. You think differently, speak differently, perceive differently. That's the mark of transformation. You've graduated from spiritual survival to spiritual strategy. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer panic, you pray. You no longer question every delay, you trust the design behind it. Your pain has become your passport. You've earned your authority the hard way through process, through perseverance, through prayer. And now, heaven is ready to entrust you with influence. Because you've proven faithful in obscurity. Remember this, God never wastes what He wounds. The very things that hurt you most will become the things that heal others. That's what makes you different from the rest. You don't just recover, you redeem. Every scar becomes a sermon. Every failure becomes fuel. Every delay becomes divine documentation that you were trained by heaven itself. The season of breaking has turned into the season of building. You're not just being restored, you're being reinforced. The same hands that allowed the shaking are the hands now shaping your next chapter. And soon, what once felt like warfare will become worship, right before victory. The world often looks as though it's falling apart. The tension becomes unbearable. Relationships grow unstable. And peace seems to evaporate from your surroundings. But don't misread the moment. Chosen one, what you're experiencing is not destruction, it's disruption. The shaking isn't meant to break you. It's meant to remove everything that can't go with you into your next chapter. Every divine victory begins with disorder. The chaos that swirls around you now is the final tantrum of darkness before it loses its grip. The enemy senses what heaven is preparing to release. And in desperation, he throws confusion, conflict, and fear at the ones chosen to rise. You've felt that lately, haven't you? Sleepless nights, emotional weight, sudden discouragement for no clear reason. That's not coincidence, that's a signal. Heaven is near, and hell knows it. Before a storm ends, the winds always roar loudest. The same is true spiritually. The closer you come to breakthrough, the louder the resistance becomes. Hell is not creative, it's repetitive. It tries to use old weapons, doubt, distraction, disappointment, to keep you circling the same mountain. But what used to wound you can no longer hold you. Because this time, you recognize the pattern. This time, you stand in authority. It may feel like you're fighting on every front: finances, emotions, relationships, even your own mind. But that's because victory doesn't come cheap. What's being contended for in the unseen is greater than anything you can imagine. Your obedience, your endurance, your intercession, they've been shaking the spirit realm. And now, the enemy is responding like a cornered shadow. The pressure is proof that your prayers are working. When heaven prepares to deliver something powerful, the atmosphere grows heavy. You may feel forgotten, but you're actually being fortified. The Lord is strengthening the walls of your faith, so that when blessing floods in, it won't break you. Sometimes the warfare increases not because you're failing, but because you've finally become dangerous to darkness. The ancient words recorded in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 13, remind us, "Therefore put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, to stand." Leo, that's what this moment is about. Standing when everything shakes, you remain unshaken. When fear rises, you refuse to bow. When temptation whispers, you choose truth over turmoil. The battle isn't about winning one fight. It's about proving that nothing can uproot what God has planted in you. There's a sacred dignity in the way you've endured. You've faced invisible wars and kept your posture of peace. You've smiled while bleeding, encouraged others while feeling empty, and stood in faith when evidence was against you. That's not weakness, that's warfare done right. The devil doesn't fear loud prayers, he fears steady ones. The enemy's goal isn't always to destroy your life. Sometimes it's simply to distract you from your assignment. He knows that if he can get you focused on frustration, you'll forget the promise. But every time you return to stillness, every time you breathe and say, "God, I trust you anyway," you rob hell of its victory. There's a mystery in this season. You're learning to fight differently. You used to swing wildly, trying to fix everything at once. Now you understand that sometimes the greatest strike is silence. You fight by resting. You win by worshipping. You conquer by staying calm. That is the posture of a trained warrior. The chaos you see externally mirrors the order God is creating internally. You are being stabilized in the middle of the shaking. You are learning that peace is not the absence of battle, it's the presence of assurance, even as storms rage. You've discovered the unshakable truth. God has not changed his mind about you. And that, dear chosen one, terrifies darkness. Because once you know you're chosen, you can no longer be controlled. The fear that once governed your decisions is breaking. The shame that once silenced your worship is lifting. The anxiety that once paralyzed your progress is losing its authority. Do not mistake the intensity of this season for abandonment. The heat has turned up because the impurities are burning away. You're being purified, not punished. And when the fire finishes its work, you'll walk out carrying the kind of strength that can't be imitated or replaced. So stand your ground. The shaking is not a sign of failure, it's a signal of fulfillment. The darkness is desperate because the dawn is determined. What's been hidden is about to be revealed, and what's been delayed is about to be delivered. This final resistance is not your downfall, it's your announcement. Heaven has already decided your victory. Now the earth is just catching up. There are moments when heaven speaks so softly that only the awakened can hear it. You've been noticing signs, dreams that feel more vivid. Words that echo in your spirit. Small coincidences that align too perfectly to ignore. These aren't random, they're divine confirmations. Heaven has been trying to tell you, you're next in line for glory. Sometimes the confirmation doesn't arrive through angels or thunder, it comes through quiet, ordinary encounters. A stranger smiles at you with kindness when you were ready to give up. A message appears on your screen at the exact moment your faith starts to shake. The timing is too precise to be luck. It's God whispering through the ordinary, saying, I see you. Keep walking. And you may think you've missed your turn, that you've been overlooked. But that's impossible for the chosen. Heaven never forgets its appointments. What feels like delay is often divine sequencing, heaven aligning every moving piece so that when it's your moment, nothing can stop it. The signs are everywhere. If you look closely, that sudden peace you feel after crying, that's confirmation. The opportunity that seems to find you instead of you chasing it, that's alignment. The closed door that made you weep but saved you from destruction, that's mercy. Divine confirmation rarely shouts, it gently insists. When you walk with heaven, everything begins to carry meaning. Even silence becomes a message. God can speak through sunsets, through numbers, through unexpected words from people who don't even know they're being used as messengers. Each detail is heaven's signature, reminding you that you are part of a much larger design. The prophet Elijah spoke as recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 19, verse 12. And after the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. That whisper is how heaven moves. It doesn't need volume to confirm truth. The confirmation comes not to surprise you, but to steady you. It reminds you that the same God who began the story is still writing it. But here's what you must understand. Divine confirmation doesn't just affirm, it activates. When heaven confirms something, it's not for comfort, it's for movement. The sign doesn't come so you can stay where you are. It comes to push you into where you belong. Every confirmation is a summons. It's God saying, "What I promised is closer than you think. Now move like it." On, you are entering a phase where everything that once confused you will begin to connect. The puzzle pieces are aligning, and the picture is starting to make sense. That's why your spirit has been restless. It knows there's motion ahead. Heaven doesn't send signs without intention. When confirmation repeats itself, it's a call to prepare. The same numbers showing up everywhere. The same phrases following you. The same thought revisiting your heart. These are not random recurrences. They are divine reminders. Heaven is repeating itself, so you won't miss the moment. Think of it like waves on the shore. They come in rhythm, one after another, not to annoy the sand, but to reshape it. That's how divine confirmation works. Each sign smooths away your fear, washing your heart in certainty until faith feels natural again. But you must stay sensitive. If you get distracted by frustration, you'll miss the signal. That's why God sometimes quiets your surroundings to sharpen your awareness. The silence you've been complaining about is actually the amplifier for heaven's whisper. And when the next sign comes, and it will, you'll feel it. A sudden warmth in your chest, a phrase that lights your spirit, an inner knowing that defies logic. Don't doubt it. Receive it. Because the same God who confirmed it before will confirm it again until your courage catches up with your calling. Right now, as a declaration of recognition, go to the comments and write, "I see it." Those 3 words carry power. When you type them, you're doing more than engaging with a message. You're acknowledging that your spiritual eyes are open. You're saying to heaven, "I recognize the signs. I won't miss my moment." Every "I see it" written becomes a spark of alignment. A declaration that you are awake to God's signals. You are not lost. You are being led. You are not wandering. You are walking through confirmation. Heaven has not forgotten you. It's just ensuring that when the time comes, your heart is ready. The whisper has already begun. The signs are all around you. And soon, the confirmation you've been waiting for will become the manifestation you've been praying for. Something in the air has changed, hasn't it? Chosen one, you can feel it. The heaviness is lifting. The air around you feels cleaner, clearer, almost electric with possibility. It's subtle, but unmistakable. You're standing in the middle of a spiritual weather shift. What was once cloudy and confusing is beginning to make sense. What was once delayed is now drawing near. The atmosphere is rearranging itself to match the magnitude of your next chapter. You've been faithful in the dark, and now heaven is preparing the stage for your unveiling. Think of it like dawn after a long night. For hours, the world seems motionless, but just before sunrise, the sky begins to change hue. Shadows soften, the horizon glows faintly, and creation holds its breath for light to break through. That's where you are right now, the in-between moment when heaven whispers, "It's time." You may not see the full light yet, but you can feel it. The shift doesn't always come with trumpets or fanfare. Sometimes it begins with a subtle peace after chaos, or a small opportunity that carries divine weight. The Spirit begins to rearrange your surroundings, removing distractions, redirecting your focus, and realigning your heart with purpose. The book of Isaiah, chapter 60, verse 1 declares, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Those words are more than ancient poetry. They are a prophetic mirror of your present reality. You've been sitting quietly while heaven has been building silently. But now, the shift means movement. The light that once seemed distant is now finding you. This change might feel strange at first. You'll notice new people entering your life with intentions that align with your purpose. You'll see certain doors reopen that once slammed shut. You'll even find that old battles no longer drain you because they no longer define you. That's how divine shifting works. It replaces struggle with strategy, pressure with power, waiting with walking. It's as if heaven is rethreading the fabric of your days. Everything begins to interlock in a way that feels both surprising and inevitable. What you lost is being repurposed. What you learned is becoming language. And what you endured is turning into evidence of grace. But don't rush this moment. Savor it. You're not just stepping into a new season, you're stepping into a new self. The version of you that doubted, panicked, and hesitated is fading. The version that trusts, listens, and leads is emerging. This shift is not only external, it's internal. The way you think, the way you pray, even the way you breathe has changed. You no longer chase validation, you crave alignment. You no longer fear rejection, you recognize redirection. This is spiritual maturity. The child of faith has become the warrior of wisdom. Sometimes, divine transitions feel like losing your balance. But that's just heaven teaching you a new rhythm. You are learning to walk on higher ground. The gravity of old fears doesn't pull you like it used to. The doubts that once haunted you have lost their volume. Because when God shifts the atmosphere, even your mind learns to breathe differently. And perhaps the most beautiful part is this: your peace will become contagious. The people around you will feel it. They'll ask what changed, and you'll realize that it's not what's happening to you, but what's happening through you. You've become a carrier of calm, a vessel of victory, a walking forecast of divine weather wherever you go. Storms begin to settle. If this message stirs your spirit, pause for a moment. Breathe in. Feel the shift. Then, if your heart feels led, tap that like button, not for me, but as a way of saying, I recognize this atmosphere. I'm ready for what's next. Share this message with someone who's been walking through their own night. Because dawn feels brighter when we rise together. And if your spirit keeps returning to this space, consider subscribing not out of habit, but to stay connected to a voice that reminds you what heaven sounds like. Because sometimes, one shared word of light can chase away 1,000 silent shadows. The shift is here. You don't have to force it. You only have to flow with it. Stand tall. Breathe deeply. And let your spirit rise with the morning light. What's coming won't require striving, it will require stillness. Soon, everything around you will echo what your soul already knows. The waiting is over. The weather has changed. The glory is rising. There is always a sacred tension between the crown and the cross. Chosen one, every destiny that carries glory must also carry weight. You cannot wear the authority of heaven without first walking through the humility of surrender. Before God places a crown on your head, He must carve compassion into your heart. This is the mystery of divine balance. Glory and suffering are not opposites, they are partners. The cross purifies what the crown will magnify. If you rush to wear the crown without enduring the cross, you risk carrying power without purity. And heaven never allows polluted hands to handle holy things. You felt that weight before, the invisible ache that comes with calling. The sleepless nights where you wonder why obedience costs so much. The silence that follows when you say yes to God, expecting celebration, but meeting isolation instead. It's not punishment, it's participation in something eternal. You're walking the same road every chosen vessel has walked before you, the path of surrender that precedes resurrection. The crown and the cross were always meant to coexist. The cross keeps you grounded, the crown lifts you higher. One teaches you dependence, the other teaches you dominion. Without the cross, pride would poison your authority. Without the crown, pain would paralyze your purpose. God, in His mercy, gives both, so that humility and honor can live in the same heart. The Apostle Paul understood this mystery when he wrote about the thorn in his flesh. Even as miracles flowed through him, pain kept him close to grace. The thorn reminded him that power is perfected in weakness. And perhaps that's what your pain is doing right now, not punishing you, but perfecting you. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Zechariah. Chapter 4, verse 6, "Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord Almighty." That verse is the key to carrying both the cross and the crown. You don't endure by effort, you endure by Spirit. You don't ascend by ambition, you ascend by surrender. The strength that sustains the chosen is never self-made, it's heaven-fed. Think of how a seed must first split open before it grows. Its shell cracks, its comfort dies. Yet that breaking is the beginning of new life. The same is true for you. The cross is not a symbol of loss, it's the soil where resurrection is born. Every time something in you breaks, something greater in you begins to bloom. When you carry your cross, you carry the secret language of heaven's sacrifice. It's a dialect that demons can't decipher and pride can't pronounce. Every silent yes you've whispered, every hidden tear you've offered, every time you chose faith instead of bitterness, those were your sacred syllables of surrender. Heaven heard them all. And here is the beauty of this divine paradox. The very pain that once felt like weight will soon become your weapon. The scars that once embarrassed you will become your credentials. Because crowns are not awarded for perfection, they're entrusted to those who endured the process without losing their purity. You've been learning that strength is not loud, it's consistent. The strongest hearts are often the quietest ones. The ones that bleed but still bless. The ones that bend but never break. That's how heaven recognizes its warriors, not by titles, but by testimony. Sometimes, the hardest part of carrying your cross is not the weight itself, but the misunderstanding it attracts. People may look at your struggle and assume it's failure. They see the cross and miss the crown being forged behind it. But heaven sees what they cannot, the refinement, the shaping, the divine rehearsal for glory. And soon, the day will come when the cross you carried becomes the platform from which you speak. The very thing that once humbled you will become the proof that grace was always greater. Don't resent the burden. Chosen one, every splinter of your cross is sacred. Every ache is accounted for. Every delay is deliberate. God is not cruel. He's careful. He knows how much weight you can carry, and He knows how to turn that weight into worship. When the moment comes, and it will, you'll find the crown doesn't replace the cross. It redeems it. The pain won't vanish. but it will make sense. You'll realize that the cross wasn't meant to break you, it was meant to balance you. It taught you how to reign without arrogance, how to lead without losing compassion, how to hold power with gentle hands. And when you finally wear your crown, you'll recognize it not as a reward for surviving, but as a reminder, the same hands that once carried pain now carry purpose. Something has been moving beneath the surface. Chosen one. You can't see it yet, but you can feel it. There's a quiet stirring in the air around you. An invisible rhythm syncing with the beat of your heart. What you've been praying for isn't lost, it's in motion. The miracle isn't waiting for permission anymore. It's gathering momentum behind the veil of the unseen. Every prayer, every tear, every moment of obedience has been sowing seeds in heaven's soil. For a while, it felt like nothing was growing. The field looked barren. The sky seemed silent. But what you couldn't see was the underground work, the roots stretching deep, the foundation forming strong. God doesn't grow things in the spotlight first. He grows them in secret. You've entered that sacred season when heaven starts revealing what's been building in silence. Suddenly, opportunities begin aligning. People reappear. Doors you forgot about begin to creak open. It's not coincidence, it's culmination. What you thought was wasted time was actually gestation. Heaven never delays, it develops. You are standing at the threshold of manifestation. Everything is converging: the lessons, the losses, the longing. The pattern makes sense now. Every delay was protection. Every detour was direction. Every disappointment was divine redirection. Heaven has been constructing something massive behind the scenes, and now it's moving into view. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms, chapter 37, verse 4, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." This isn't just about receiving blessings, it's about becoming aligned enough that your heart's desires mirror God's. That's when miracles move swiftly, when what you want and what heaven wills begin to sound the same. That's why this time it will happen differently. You won't need to strive, chase, or prove. The miracle will meet you because you're finally walking at heaven's pace. You've been asking, "Lord, when will it happen?" But heaven has been answering in motion, not in words. Doors you didn't even knock on are unlocking. People are speaking your name in rooms you've never entered. Emails, messages, or calls will appear like gentle ripples from the prayers you once whispered. The miracle is not on its way, it's unfolding even now. The waiting season is over. You've transitioned into the witnessing season. But remember, manifestation doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes, it starts quietly, like the faint light before sunrise. Don't dismiss small beginnings. The first drops always precede the downpour. You are living proof that faith never fails, it just matures. You held on when it made no sense. You believed when you had no evidence. You stayed faithful when nothing seemed fair. That faith became the foundation for this miracle. Heaven has measured your endurance and found you ready. So now, walk differently. Expectation isn't arrogance, it's awareness. Look for God in the details. The miracle may not show up the way you imagined, but it will carry the same fragrance of grace. It will arrive tailor-made for your story. The promise will fit perfectly, because it was designed around your obedience. There is a shift happening in your atmosphere. Even as you read this, the divine clock has struck appointed time. What was once held back is now being released. The people meant to bless you are being awakened. The doors meant to open are hearing their command. The very environment is adjusting to make room for your reward. Chosen one. The waiting was never wasted. It was weaving. Every not yet from heaven was actually a not like that. God has been fine-tuning details, ensuring that when the blessing comes, it won't just bless you, it will bless through you. The miracle you're about to see will not only change your circumstance, it will confirm your calling. It's time to anchor your faith in motion. Don't just believe the miracle will happen, believe it's happening. You can sense it. You can almost touch it. Heaven is folding timelines in your favor. Right now, type 555 inches, the comments as your declaration of faith. 5 is the number of grace, and 555 represents overflowing grace, the kind that accelerates miracles. When you write it, don't do it out of ritual, do it out of revelation. It's your prophetic signal to heaven that says, I am ready to receive what's already in motion. I am aligned. I am awake. No, the miracle isn't coming. It's already moving toward you, guided by divine precision. Every second, it's getting closer, clearer, stronger. Keep your heart open and your spirit steady, because soon, very soon, the thing you've only dared to imagine will stand right before your eyes. And in that moment, you'll realize it was never delayed. It was divinely timed. You've begun to sense it, the quiet awe that comes when you realize how close you are to what you've prayed for. Yet, alongside the excitement, there's another feeling rising, fear, not of failure this time, but of greatness. The mind can grow comfortable in struggle. It's the unfamiliar light that startles it. That's why when your blessing draws near, a subtle panic often appears. You begin to question, am I really ready? Can I truly carry this? Chosen one. That tension you feel isn't weakness, it's awakening. You're standing in the thin place between promise and performance, where your spirit knows you're capable, but your old self is still catching up. The fear of your own greatness is the final resistance before revelation. You see, it's easier to stay small when smallness feels safe. When you've learned to survive off crumbs, the feast can feel intimidating. When you've spent years fighting battles, peace can feel suspicious. But heaven didn't bring you this far to abandon you at the door of destiny. You are not an imposter. You are evidence that God's favor defies logic. The truth is, greatness costs more than failure. Failure teaches through endings. Greatness teaches through endurance. The spotlight exposes everything: the cracks, the motives, the heart. That's why God took so long, preparing you in hiddenness. You were not waiting for opportunity. Opportunity was waiting for your maturity. As was spoken in the sacred texts of old, Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9 declares, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." End quote. Those words were never meant for comfort alone. They were a command. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to walk forward despite it. The fear of your greatness is simply the evidence that you are standing on holy ground, that what's before you is too vast to conquer without divine partnership. You are not meant to handle this by yourself. The grace that carried you through your wilderness will empower you in your arrival. But you must remember, Success requires the same humility as struggle. The crown can weigh heavier than the cross if pride takes root. That's why this fear feels so real. It's the Spirit keeping you anchored in reverence. Heaven knows that unguarded greatness can become self-destruction. So before the full blessing manifests, God allows you to feel the trembling of transition. It's not punishment, it's calibration. You're learning how to breathe in wider air, how to carry responsibility without collapsing under it, how to walk in visibility without losing your vision. You may notice that your prayers have shifted. You're no longer begging for miracles, you're asking for wisdom. You're not crying for rescue, you're asking for revelation. That's how you know maturity has come. You're not chasing validation anymore, you're craving alignment. The very things that once intimidated you now inspire you. Still, the fear creeps in at odd moments. It whispers, "What if you're not ready?" But readiness is not perfection, it's permission. Heaven wouldn't have released this next level if you weren't ready to inhabit it. Your unease doesn't disqualify you, it humbles you, keeping your heart tethered to the source of your strength. Think of the eagle. It hesitates on the edge of its nest, feeling the wind rush beneath its wings. The sky looks endless, and the fall seems fatal. But the moment it leaps, instinct takes over. What looked like falling becomes flight. That's exactly where you are now. The wind that once frightened you will soon carry you. You've been entrusted with influence, and that comes with weight. People will look to you for guidance, inspiration, healing. But don't let that overwhelm you. You were never meant to be their savior. You're simply their signal. You point them toward the one who made you rise. You must learn to live gently with greatness. Handle it like sacred fire. Use it to warm, not to burn. Let your success remain soaked in gratitude. Let your confidence stay clothed in compassion. The ones who rise highest are those who never forget what the ground felt like. The fear you feel right now will soon turn into reverent awe. You'll look back and realize it wasn't fear at all. It was your spirit adjusting to divine altitude. You're breathing rare air now, the kind reserved for those who didn't quit, who carried crosses and still chose grace. So, embrace this trembling. Let it remind you that what's ahead is holy. The same hands that led you through storms are now guiding you into sunlight. You're not standing in uncertainty, you're standing in expansion. And when you finally take that step into the fullness of your calling, the fear will dissolve, replaced by a quiet knowing. You were born for this. The moment heaven has been preparing you for is drawing near. Chosen one. You can feel it in the stillness, the sense that something vast is about to unfold. The tension is different now. It's not the ache of waiting, but the weight of imminence. You've crossed through storms, endured refining fires, and now the wind itself seems to shift in your favor. This is the sound of heaven opening. Every season of struggle was leading here. Every unanswered prayer, every tear that once fell in secret, they've all converged at this threshold. The doors that once resisted you are beginning to respond to your presence. What used to feel locked no longer does, because divine timing has turned its key. The invisible barriers that kept you small are crumbling quietly. And for the first time, your spirit senses that permission has been granted. This isn't about luck. It's about alignment. Heaven doesn't operate in randomness. It moves in rhythm. You've finally become synchronized with heaven's tempo. And now, everything begins to unfold with grace instead of grinding. Things that once required effort will now happen with ease. Where you once had to chase, you'll now attract. It's as if the entire universe is exhaling, making space for what's next. Creation recognizes when a chosen one steps into readiness. The earth itself begins to cooperate, aligning opportunities, relationships, and resources to serve divine purpose. The wind carries whispers of favor. The ground beneath your feet feels charged with possibility. Even time bends to accommodate destiny. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1, verse 37, "For with God nothing shall be impossible." End of. That statement isn't just a reassurance, it's a revelation. The impossible was never about circumstance, it was about timing. When God declares a season open, impossibility evaporates. The walls that confined you yesterday become the witness of your liberation today. You've entered that holy moment when heaven's yes begins to echo through the natural world. Circumstances align like stars. Long-forgotten promises resurface, and divine favor moves faster than explanation. You don't have to fight for it anymore. It's already been decreed. What's happening now isn't random breakthrough. It's righteous unveiling. You will notice how peace replaces panic. Where you once forced outcomes, now things simply fit. That's what open heaven feels like, effortless flow after exhausting resistance. The same road that once broke you now carries you. Grace has changed the gravity around your life. This is the season of divine recompense. The losses you endured weren't theft, they were investments. The time you thought was wasted has been multiplied. Heaven keeps perfect records, and nothing you gave in faith has gone unnoticed. Every unseen act of obedience, every quiet prayer, every tear sown in trust, they're all returning now. Pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing in form and favor. And this time, you'll see the difference. The blessings won't just fill your hands, they'll fill your horizon. You'll see it in the opportunities that arrive without striving, in the peace that lingers even when challenges appear, in the way your spirit stands taller without explanation. The heavens have opened, and you are walking beneath their glow. But remember, when heaven opens, humility must deepen. The open sky is not an invitation to boast, but to bless. You've been given access, not for attention, but for assignment. This favor isn't about status, it's about stewardship. What comes next will require the same purity that got you here. Heavenly openings also demand discernment. Not every door that opens now is divine. Some are distractions designed to dilute your focus. You'll need to listen closely. True openings bring peace, not pressure. They expand your capacity, not your chaos. You'll know the difference, because real favor doesn't drain, it deepens. As this shift unfolds, keep your heart steady. Don't run ahead of grace. Walk in step with it. Every move now is sacred. Every decision carries weight. The same God who opened heaven for you will guide you through the threshold. You don't need to manipulate outcomes. You simply need to remain available. Soon, what's been promised will become visible. The clouds of confusion will part, revealing the architecture of fulfillment. And when that moment comes, you'll realize that heaven never forgot you. It was always building this day, brick by brick, behind the veil of patience. You've waited long enough. The heavens are open, and the light is pouring through. Stand still for a moment. Feel it. The same God who started this story is now writing its most radiant chapter, And this time, nothing can close what heaven has opened. There's a certain stillness after victory. Chosen one, a quiet moment when you realize the storm has stopped and the ground beneath your feet no longer trembles. The air feels lighter, your heart steadier. You've crossed the line that once felt impossible. What was meant to bury you became the very soil that birthed you. The power you thought you lost has returned, but it's no longer wild or wounded. It's refined, royal, and ready. You've reclaimed what the enemy tried to steal: your confidence, your clarity, your courage. This isn't the kind of power that shouts. It's the kind that simply is. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything, because its existence speaks louder than any announcement. You walk differently now, not from arrogance, but from awareness. You've realized who you are and whose you are. Your voice carries new weight because it's been washed in truth. Your presence shifts atmospheres because peace has become your armor. People may look at you and think you've changed overnight, but heaven knows this strength has been years in the making. Every scar has been turned into strategy. Every heartbreak has been transmuted into holy wisdom. This is the return of power, not worldly dominance, but divine authority. The kind of authority that flows from humility, that commands without control, that leads without pride. You are no longer trying to prove your worth. You are living from it. That's what makes you unstoppable. The apostle reminds us in his letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 37. In all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. More than conquerors. That means your victory doesn't just end battles, it creates new beginnings. You don't just overcome, you overflow. The same love that lifted you now flows through you, touching everyone who crosses your path. You've noticed it already. When you speak, people listen differently. When you walk into a room, peace arrives with you. It's not about charisma, it's about charge. You've been charged by heaven's current, and everything around you feels it. You're not merely existing, you're emanating. You're learning that divine power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it sits quietly in a corner, changing hearts without ever raising its voice. Sometimes it stands in silence, and mountains move simply because faith has taken form. That's the kind of authority that now rests on your shoulders. Think of yourself as a lighthouse. You don't chase ships, you stand in place, shining. Those who are meant to find their way will see your light and know where safety lives. You no longer need to chase validation. Your purpose radiates on its own. And yet, don't mistake calm for complacency. The return of power isn't an ending, it's an invitation. Heaven restored your strength, not so you could rest in comfort, but so you could rise in calling. You are being positioned as a guidepost, a voice of clarity for those still wandering in storms you've already survived. If this message resonates with the deepest parts of you, pause for a breath. Let your heart settle into the truth of how far you've come. Then, if you feel led, show gratitude in simple ways. Maybe click that like button, not out of habit, but as a whisper of thanks to heaven for every hidden victory that brought you here. Maybe share this message with someone who needs to remember that they, too, can rise again. And if this journey has spoken to your soul, consider subscribing so we can keep walking through the unfolding chapters together. Each time you share light, you help it travel farther than your voice ever could. Each click, Each word of encouragement becomes another beam from the lighthouse, a small but sacred act that reminds someone else. You're not forgotten. You're still chosen. You've stepped into a new rhythm now. You no longer pray from desperation, but from dominion. You speak not to plead, but to proclaim. When you lift your hands now, heaven doesn't hear begging, it hears partnership. You've become a co-creator of divine purpose, an extension of God's strength wrapped in human skin. Your return to power isn't loud, because it doesn't need to be. The proof of your authority is peace. The evidence of your anointing is consistency. The mark of your maturity is mercy. You no longer fight to win, you move to serve. And that, beloved chosen one, is what true victory looks like. So stand tall, steady in grace, anchored in truth. Your voice has been restored, your vision renewed, your purpose reignited. The arena of destiny awaits not as a place of performance, but as a platform of purpose. The crown has been placed back upon your head, not to make you look powerful, but to remind you that you are called to reign with love. You've crossed the turning point. Chosen one. What was once pursuit has become presence. You are no longer chasing victory, you are walking in it. The striving has quieted, the proving has ended, and the endless reaching for validation has dissolved into knowing. This is the peace of fulfilled promise, not loud, not boastful, but settled deep within your bones. For so long, you lived in the tension between believing and becoming. You fought battles in silence, carried faith like fire in a storm, and held on when everything around you suggested it was time to let go. But now, you've entered the realm of rest, the sacred stillness where faith has done its work. You no longer need to convince yourself that you're chosen, you know it. And knowing is what gives your steps such quiet authority. This is what walking in the wind looks like. It's not about trophies or applause, it's about alignment. You rise in the morning with clarity. You move through your days with peace. And you rest at night with gratitude. Your spirit has learned rhythm, not rush. You've discovered that living in victory means moving from overflow, not exhaustion. You've stopped trying to control the outcome because you've finally trusted the one who authors it. What once frightened you now fuels you. You used to pray for protection from storms. Now you walk through them like someone who knows the wind obeys the same God you serve. That's the difference between a believer and a conqueror. One hopes for safety. The other walks in sovereignty. The ancient words recorded in the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 7, declare, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This peace is not the absence of conflict, it's the presence of confidence. It's the calm that comes from realizing that every thread of your story, even the torn ones, has been woven into something whole. The disappointments that once wounded you now serve as reminders of how far you've come. What used to bring anxiety now brings awareness. You can finally look at your past without pain and your future without fear. Living in the win doesn't mean the absence of challenge, it means the absence of panic. You've learned that every new obstacle is simply an opportunity for grace to prove itself again. You no longer fear failure because you've seen what God can do with brokenness. You've learned that even when you lose something, you never truly lose. He turns every ending into expansion. Your life now flows like a river that's found its course. The detours make sense, The bends no longer frustrate you. You've become one with the current, and because of that, people who encounter you feel peace without even knowing why. You've become evidence of victory, living proof that what was once chaos can be turned into clarity. You've also realized something sacred. The win isn't about you alone. True victory always creates room for others. You are no longer fighting for survival, you're living for significance. The grace that once rescued you has now recruited you. Your life has become a bridge for others still wandering through their wilderness. This is the quiet glory of the chosen. You don't boast in your breakthrough, you build with it. You don't parade your victory, you plant it. Every success becomes a seed, every lesson a lantern. You're not the same person who started this journey. You've become a living invitation for others to believe again. You move differently now, not because everything is perfect, but because you've made peace with imperfection. You've stopped waiting for ideal conditions to feel whole. You've stopped needing validation to feel valuable. You've stopped demanding proof to trust the promise. That's what walking in victory looks like. Freedom from the need to be anything other than aligned. Every moment feels sacred now. Even the simple things, a morning breeze, a word of kindness, a quiet sunset remind you of divine rhythm. You no longer search for signs because your very life is one. Every breath you take is a testament that grace wins every time. You walk lighter, speak softer, love deeper. You carry wisdom not as a weapon, but as water. Wherever you go, life begins to bloom again. Because peace follows presence, and presence follows purpose. Chosen one, you have learned the hardest lesson of all. The goal was never the crown. It was the becoming, and now that you've become, the victory is no longer something you hold, it's something you are. You walk in the win, not because the world says so, but because heaven decided it long ago. And now, chosen one, you stand on the other side of everything that once tried to break you. The winds that once howled against you have grown quiet. The shadows that once mocked your hope now bow before your light. You have become the very thing you once prayed for, a living sign of God's faithfulness. A breathing testimony of endurance and grace. You are no longer the seeker of miracles. You are the miracle. Every scar on your heart has become scripture. Every lesson carved into your spirit now reads like a psalm of victory. You carry wisdom that can't be taught, only lived. You walk, not as the wounded, but as the witness, proof that redemption is not a myth, but a method. Heaven did not just deliver you, it developed you. The storms that threatened to drown you were the same waters that taught you how to walk. You are the legacy of answered prayers, the continuation of promises made long before you ever took your first breath. You may have thought your story was about your struggle, but it was always about your becoming. Heaven was writing more than a rescue, it was writing revelation. You were never merely being saved, you were being sent. As the prophet Isaiah recorded in chapter 61, verse 3, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. And that is what you wear now. Beauty for ashes. Your life is the fragrance of divine exchange, the aroma of transformation. Every dark night has been repurposed into light. The places where you once broke are now blooming. The ground of your grief has become fertile soil for grace. You are walking proof that God can turn mourning into melody and pain into purpose. But this victory was never meant to stop with you. The chosen never hoard the fire, they pass it on. You are now a torchbearer. carrying light into spaces where others still stumble. The same hands that trembled in weakness are now steady enough to lift others. You are no longer just surviving your story, you are sowing it. Each word you speak, each act of kindness you offer, each truth you share becomes a seed that multiplies hope. Legacy is not about being remembered, it's about leaving something that keeps remembering God. And you, chosen one, are that remembrance. Your resilience becomes someone's roadmap. Your breakthrough becomes someone's blueprint. Your scars become someone's sign that healing is possible. Heaven entrusts its greatest stories to those who have known both agony and awe. You have walked through both and emerged radiant. You are no longer waiting for the world to recognize your worth. You are busy reminding others of theirs. You've learned that true leadership is servanthood wrapped in strength, and true legacy is love that refuses to die. There is a quiet authority in you now. You don't need to announce it, it emanates. You walk into rooms and the air shifts, not because of status, but because of spirit. People can sense when a life has been refined in fire. They feel peace when you speak, not because your words are perfect, but because your presence carries proof. The world will call it resilience, but heaven calls it remembrance. Every time you choose compassion over bitterness, you keep the flame alive. Every time you forgive, instead of retaliate, you stretch heaven wider across the earth. Every time you rise again, you prove that darkness never had the final word. This is your legacy. You became light. You learned that power is not control, it's consistency. You discovered that holiness isn't perfection, it's wholeness. You realized that victory isn't a destination, it's a way of walking. Now you move forward, carrying the calm of one who has seen the end from the beginning. You no longer rush. You no longer fear. You simply shine. Every step you take writes scripture across the soil, a living gospel of grace and grit. And when others look at you and ask how you survived, you'll smile not in pride, but in peace and say, I didn't just survive, I was transformed. No, because that's what it means to be chosen, not spared from the storm, but strengthened through it, not protected from pain, but perfected by purpose, not rescued from fire, but refined until the fire bowed in reverence. You are the continuation of heaven's story, the living echo of divine endurance. And from this point forward, your life will speak without striving. Your presence will heal without effort, and your legacy will burn with unending light. You are not at the end, you are at the beginning of everything heaven intended when it called your name. The crown is not the conclusion, it's the confirmation. The journey doesn't end here, it expands. The world will remember you not by what you owned or achieved, but by the way you carried grace. You are the legacy of the chosen, proof that God still writes masterpieces with the ashes of brokenness. Take a breath. Chosen one. Let every word that found you settle deep into your spirit like rain after drought. You've walked through every chapter, felt the tension, the trembling, the transformation, and now you stand radiant, complete, aware. This journey wasn't about perfection, it was about becoming. If these words have spoken to the quiet places of your soul, pause here for a moment of gratitude. Whisper a simple thank you for the storms that strengthened you, for the grace that guided you, for the peace that never truly left. Then, if your heart feels led, show that gratitude outwardly. Click that like button as your silent amen. Share this message with someone still searching for their own reminder. And leave a comment with what resonated most. Your reflection might be the light someone else needs tonight. And if you wish to keep walking this path of revelation, subscribe, not for routine, but to stay connected to a space where faith and fire meet, where every word reminds you that heaven hasn't finished speaking. You are chosen, you are ready, you are rising, and the world needs the light that only you can bring.